Lila wiped her hands on the worn apron she always wore to work. The small diner smelled faintly of fried eggs and coffee, the scent familiar and comforting to anyone who came through its door. The sun was just starting to peek through the dusty windows, casting warm light across the old wooden tables. Lila had worked here for years, and while it was not a glamorous job, it gave her something money could not: purpose. She had seen so many people come and go in this town, but she had grown attached to the regulars, especially the children who often wandered in after school, their shoes dusty from the streets and their eyes bright with hope. Today was no different. As she arranged the chairs and wiped the counters, she noticed a group of children lingering by the door. They were orphans, all from different backgrounds, yet they had formed a small family of their own. Lila had met them over the years and had grown fond of each one. There was little Anna, with her tangled hair and quiet smile, Thomas, who loved to talk endlessly about imaginary adventures, and little Sophie, the youngest, always holding tightly to her worn-out doll as if it were her only anchor in the world. The diner was modest, but it was a place of warmth and kindness, mostly because of Lila. She often gave the children extra snacks, small portions of pie, or even just a comforting word when the day had been hard. Some people might have thought she was wasting her time, but to Lila, this was the most important part of her day. Seeing the children laugh, seeing them safe and cared for, made the long hours and low pay worth every moment. As the children shuffled toward the counter, Lila smiled and crouched to meet them at their level. "Good morning, everyone," she said softly. "Did you sleep well?" The children nodded eagerly. Anna held up a small notebook. "We finished our homework, Miss Lila," she said proudly. Lila's heart warmed. "That's wonderful. Let's see what you've done." She examined their work carefully, praising each effort and offering gentle corrections. For Lila, these small moments of encouragement were as satisfying as any tip she had ever received. The bell above the diner door jingled, signaling the arrival of a customer. Lila straightened, smiling professionally, ready to greet whoever had come in. She noticed a man sitting in one of the booths near the back. He was dressed in simple clothes, yet something about his presence seemed different. He watched quietly, his gaze fixed on her as she moved about the room. Lila didn't pay much attention. It was not unusual for strangers to come and go in the diner. "Good morning, sir. What can I get for you today?" she asked cheerfully. The man looked up, his eyes thoughtful. "Just coffee, please." "Black," he said softly. Lila nodded and moved to the counter to prepare his order. She had been working since early morning, pouring coffee and arranging plates, and though her body ached from the repetitive motions, she felt alive in a way she never had before. Helping others, even in small ways, gave her energy she could not get from sleep or rest. Meanwhile, the children clustered around a table, quietly sharing the pastries Lila had set aside for them. Lila's attention shifted between her tasks and their little faces, and she made sure they were all comfortable. She poured extra milk for little Sophie, who had a habit of being shy and hesitant with strangers. "Here you go, sweetheart," Lila said, smiling. "Drink up, you need your strength." Sophie's eyes brightened and she sipped carefully. Thomas leaned over, trying to sneak a bite of Anna's pastry. "Thomas," Anna scolded, but there was laughter in her voice. Lila chuckled quietly to herself. She loved these moments of innocence. Moments when the world outside did not matter, when nothing beyond the diner existed except kindness and care. The man in the booth continued to watch. He did not speak, but his interest was clear. Lila moved from table to table, delivering orders, checking on customers, and always keeping an eye on the children. Her movements were effortless, a dance she had perfected over years of practice. She greeted each person with a warm smile and a kind word, as if she genuinely cared about everyone who walked through the door. Lila was not wealthy. She rented a small apartment above the diner, barely making ends meet each month. Some days were harder than others, especially when unexpected expenses arose or when bills piled up. But she never let that show to the outside world. To the children, she was a safe place, a kind face, someone who would always be there for them. She had learned early in life that showing kindness was not about recognition or reward. It was about doing what was right, even when no one was watching. Today, like many others, brought challenges. A group of older kids from the neighborhood came in, loud and unruly, making demands and teasing the younger children. Lila stepped between them, her voice firm but calm. Hey, let's be kind, okay? We don't hurt each other here, she said. The older kids laughed, but something in her tone made them pause. They muttered under their breath, but eventually moved to another corner, leaving the younger children alone. Lila sighed, wiping her hands once again. She returned to the children, making sure they were safe and comfortable. As the morning passed, Lila noticed that the man in the booth continued to watch her. At first, she assumed he was just a curious customer, but soon she realized that his gaze was different. There was no judgment, no expectation, only quiet attention. She felt slightly uneasy, but also strangely reassured. Maybe he sensed the same truth she believed in. Kindness mattered, even in small, unseen ways. The day moved on, and Lila found herself drawn into the little dramas and triumphs of the children's lives. She helped Thomas practice reading, encouraged Anna to draw pictures, and listened patiently to Sophie's stories about her imaginary friends. Each child had their own burdens and fears, yet they seemed lighter when Lila was around. She often thought about how difficult their lives had been, growing up without parents, relying on strangers and goodwill to make it through each day. But in the diner, they could laugh, play, and just be children, even for a little while. At one point, a small crisis occurred. Sophie had accidentally spilled her drink, and the napkin she tried to use was not enough to clean it. Lila rushed over, taking the child gently by the hand. "It's okay, sweetheart. Accidents happen. Let's clean this up together." She guided Sophie to the sink, wiped the table, and replaced the spilled drink. Sophie looked up at her with wide eyes, relief flooding her face. "Thank you, Miss Lila," she whispered. Lila smiled softly. "You're welcome, Sophie. You're doing great." All the while, the man in the booth continued to watch silently. He had not interfered, but he had noticed everything. The patience, the care, the unwavering attention Lila gave to each child. Something about it stirred him deeply, a sense of respect he had not felt in a long time. He sipped his coffee, pretending to read a newspaper, yet his eyes remained fixed on her. By late morning, the diner had grown busier. Families came in for brunch, friends met for coffee, and the usual crowd trickled in with their casual chatter. Lila moved among them all, taking orders, serving plates, and making sure everyone was comfortable. She never hurried, never showed frustration, and never let the stress of the day affect the warmth she shared. The children, now finishing their pastries, looked up at her with admiration. "Miss Lila," Anna said, "you always make everything better." Lila's heart swelled with emotion. She knelt beside them, brushing back a stray lock of hair from Anna's forehead. "I'm just glad I can help," she said softly. "You all are so brave, and you deserve every bit of happiness you can find." Outside, the sun had risen higher, casting bright light across the small town. The man in the booth finally stood, leaving money on the table to cover his coffee. He gave a small nod to Lila before stepping out the door, disappearing into the streets. Lila, busy with her tasks, did not notice him leave. She did not know that someone wealthy, powerful, and influential had just witnessed her acts of kindness. She would never guess that her simple, everyday efforts were being quietly observed by someone whose life could change hers, and the children's, forever. The morning continued. Filled with laughter, chatter, and small acts of care, Lila moved between tables and the counter, ensuring that no one felt neglected or forgotten. Her life was modest, her resources limited, but her spirit was abundant. Every smile she brought, every small problem she solved, every child she comforted added meaning to her life. She did not need recognition or wealth. Her reward was in the lives she touched, the hope she nurtured, and the belief that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple out into the world. As the morning faded into early afternoon, Lila stepped outside to take a short break. The children waved goodbye for now, running off to play in the sunlit streets. Lila watched them go, her heart both heavy and light. Heavy because she knew the world outside the diner was not always kind. Light because she had given them a moment of safety and joy. She took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun and the satisfaction of knowing she had made a difference. Even if just for a few hours, little did she know. This day, the same as so many before, was about to mark the beginning of a change that would reach far beyond the walls of the diner. Someone had seen her heart, her courage, and her unwavering commitment to goodness. And someone quietly and respectfully had decided that such kindness could not go unnoticed. For Lila, it was just another day, filled with ordinary moments that carried extraordinary. The diner had returned to its usual rhythm. The sun streamed through the windows, highlighting the worn wooden tables and the faded checkered floor. Lila moved between the tables with the same gentle energy she always carried. Each step was deliberate, each smile genuine. She had learned to find joy in small moments, the way a customer's frown would turn into a smile after a comforting word, or the way a child's eyes would light up when handed an extra cookie. These little victories were what kept her going. Outside, the streets were busy with people rushing to work, students hurrying to school, and shopkeepers arranging their displays. Life in this town was quiet but never dull. Lila often found herself watching the world outside as she worked, thinking about the stories behind each person she saw. Some of those stories were sad, some joyful, but all reminded her of the fragile nature of life. It made her grateful for the moments she could touch, even in small ways, the lives of those around her. The man in the booth had returned. He came in quietly, taking a seat in the same corner, keeping to himself. Lila noticed him immediately, though she said nothing. Something about him felt familiar, though she couldn't place it. He ordered the same as before, black coffee, and sat silently observing. His presence was calm, unobtrusive, yet Lila felt a subtle weight, a sense that he was seeing more than just the surface. She returned to her work, focusing on the tables, the orders, and the laughter of children filling the diner. Today, a few of the orphaned children were waiting for her outside. Anna, Thomas, and Sophie had finished their chores for the morning and had come to see her before heading to school. Their small faces were bright with anticipation, and their steps quickened as they approached the door. Lila greeted them warmly, crouching to meet their level. "Hello, everyone. Did you have a good morning?" she asked softly. "Yes, Miss Lila," Thomas exclaimed. "Can we stay for a little while today?" "We finished our work early," Lila smiled. "Of course. You can sit here and have some breakfast while I get things ready." She led them inside, setting out plates with small portions of eggs and toast, and poured them juice from the jug at the counter. She watched as their eyes brightened at the sight of the food, small moments of joy that made her heart swell. The man in the booth continued to observe. He seemed intrigued by the way Lila interacted with the children, by her patience and attentiveness. He noticed how she never raised her voice even when Thomas accidentally spilled juice or when Sophie fidgeted nervously. Her kindness was effortless, natural, and unassuming. It was a rare quality, something money could not buy. He found himself drawn to it, feeling a mixture of admiration and curiosity. Who was this woman, and how could someone so ordinary seem so extraordinary at the same time? As the morning progressed, a small commotion erupted at one of the tables. A man and woman had come in arguing loudly, their voices sharp and tense. Lila moved quickly, approaching with a calm demeanor. "Hello, can I help you?" she asked softly. The couple barely noticed her, caught up in their argument. Lila did not interrupt aggressively. She simply waited until there was a pause. "I understand that you are upset," she said gently. "But this is a place for people to feel welcome. Please, let's try to keep it peaceful." Her words were soft but firm. The couple finally noticed her, and for the first time their anger faltered. They looked around at the small diner, the innocent eyes of children and the quiet strength in Lila's gaze. Slowly they muttered apologies and moved to another corner, their voices lowered. Lila sighed quietly, relieved, and returned to her duties. She did not dwell on the incident. She had learned long ago that peace often required patience, understanding, and sometimes quiet courage. The children had been watching her closely during the incident. They looked up at her with admiration. "Miss Lila," Anna whispered, "you're amazing. You didn't even get mad." Lila crouched to their level, brushing back a lock of hair from Anna's forehead. "Sometimes it's not about getting mad. It's about understanding and about making sure everyone feels safe." Her eyes softened as she looked at them. "And that includes all of you." Meanwhile, the man in the booth had taken out a small notebook and a pen. He wrote something quickly, then tucked it into his coat pocket. Lila did not notice. She was busy ensuring the children had everything they needed. But inside, he was quietly making a mental note of her every action, impressed by her unwavering dedication. He had seen many people in his life, but few had made him feel this way. An unfamiliar mix of admiration, respect, and something he could not yet name. By midday, the diner was filled with regulars. The aroma of freshly cooked food mixed with the faint scent of coffee, creating a warm, inviting atmosphere. Lila moved seamlessly from table to table, carrying plates, pouring drinks, and ensuring everyone felt welcome. Her energy was inexhaustible, fueled by the knowledge that she was making a difference, however small it might seem. The man continued to watch, sometimes sipping his coffee, sometimes merely observing. He had come to realize that Lila's work went beyond mere service. She was building a community, a safe space where people could find kindness, comfort, and understanding. In his world of power and wealth, he rarely saw such things. Here, in this humble diner, they were ordinary, but they were extraordinary because of her. At one point, Thomas knocked over a glass of milk. Lila rushed over, guiding him gently to the sink. "It's okay," she said softly. "Accidents happen. Let's clean it up together." She handed him a cloth and showed him how to wipe the spill, turning the small mishap into a teaching moment. The boy's face lit up as he followed her instructions, proud of his small accomplishment. The man in the booth smiled quietly, though no one could see it. He noticed how Lila's patience extended even to the smallest details, how she treated everyone with respect and care, regardless of age or status. She did not need anyone to notice her, and yet her presence had a profound impact on everyone around her. Later, as the lunchtime crowd began to arrive, Lila prepared for the busiest part of her day. Orders came in quickly, phones rang, and the kitchen staff called out for assistance. Lila moved with grace, her hands swift but careful. She balanced plates, refilled drinks, and checked in with customers, all while keeping an eye on the children in the corner. The man in the booth finally spoke. "You handle all of this with such calmness," he said softly, almost to himself. "It's remarkable." Lila looked up, startled for a moment. She had not realized he was speaking to her. "Oh, thank you," she said politely, a small blush rising to her cheeks. "I've been doing this for a long time, so I guess I'm used to it." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's more than just experience. It's something else. There's care in your work. Real care." Lila smiled, unsure how to respond. Compliments were not something she was used to receiving, especially not from strangers. "I just try to do what's right," she said quietly. "Everyone deserves kindness, especially the children." He nodded again, this time with a quiet understanding. He had been watching her not just for the morning, but for hours, noticing every small gesture. The way she straightened a chair, the way she listened, the way she encouraged the children. It was rare to see someone so dedicated to others without seeking anything in return. As the afternoon wore on, the children began to leave, one by one, with smiles and waves. Lila watched them go, her heart light but heavy at the same time. She knew that the world outside the diner could be harsh, but for a few hours each day, she could give them safety, comfort, and a sense of belonging. That was enough to keep her going, to keep her spirit strong. The man in the booth stood as well, preparing to leave. Before stepping out, he placed some money on the table, not just to pay for his coffee, but to cover the cost of the children's meals for the day. Lila did not notice, busy clearing tables and checking on the kitchen. But he had left a small mark of kindness, a way of silently supporting her work without her knowing. As he walked out the door, he glanced back once more. Lila was laughing gently at something one of the children had said, her eyes bright and full of warmth. He felt a strange pull in his chest, an admiration that went beyond the ordinary. He had come seeking quiet and reflection, but he had found something far more valuable, a glimpse of humanity, pure and unfiltered. Lila returned to her work, unaware of the small, invisible thread that had connected her to this stranger. She did not know that someone influential had seen her heart, her courage, and her unwavering kindness. She continued to pour herself into her work, helping the children, serving the customers, and keeping the diner a place of warmth and care. And for the man who returned to his world of meetings, wealth and power, the image of Lila remained with him. He could not forget the way she moved through the diner, the way she smiled at the children, the quiet strength in every action she took. He realized that true greatness was not measured by wealth or status, but by the ability to touch lives, to give without expectation, and to create a safe space for those who needed it most. The day ended, the diner quieted, and Lila finally had a moment to sit down and breathe. She looked around at the tables, the plates, the crumbs, and the faint smell of coffee lingering in the air. She felt a sense of fulfillment that no money could buy. She had made a difference, even if just a small one, and that was enough. The morning sun broke gently over the small town, casting long shadows along the streets. Lila arrived at the diner earlier than usual, as she often did, preparing for the day ahead. She moved quickly and efficiently, arranging chairs, wiping counters, and checking the small boxes of pastries that were waiting to be served. The smell of fresh bread and coffee filled the air, a familiar and comforting scent that marked the beginning of another busy day. Lila had learned to find joy in these small routines. They grounded her, reminding her that even ordinary work could carry extraordinary meaning when done with care. A soft murmur of voices drew her attention to the door. The group of orphaned children she had come to love had already arrived. Anna, Thomas, and Sophie ran up to her, their faces full of excitement. Lila knelt to greet them, her hands brushing away stray strands of hair from their foreheads.
"Good morning, everyone," she said warmly.
"Did you sleep well?" "Yes. We finished all our chores and homework," Thomas exclaimed, practically bouncing in place. "That's wonderful," Lila said, smiling. "Let's have some breakfast before school. You need energy for a good day." She led them inside, setting plates in front of each child, pouring juice, and handing out small pastries she had saved. The children's laughter and chatter filled the diner, a sound that brought warmth to her heart. Behind them, someone was watching quietly. The man who had returned to the diner a few times before had arrived again, choosing the same corner booth. He was dressed plainly, blending in with the rest of the customers, but his eyes were fixed on Lila. He watched as she moved from table to table, noticing how she treated everyone, children and adults alike, with patience, kindness, and respect. He had seen many people in his life, people who had wealth, influence, and power, yet none had shown the kind of care that Lila did without expecting anything in return. As the morning unfolded, Lila noticed a small commotion outside the diner. A young boy, not part of her usual group, was standing near the curb, looking lost and frightened. Lila's instincts kicked in. She hurried outside, the children trailing behind her. "Hey there, are you okay?" she asked gently, crouching to meet his eyes. The boy shook his head, tears forming at the corners of his eyes. I don't know where to go," he whispered. Lila's heart ached. She reached out and took his hand. "It's all right. You're safe now. Come inside and we'll figure this out." The children followed closely, their curiosity piqued but their trust in Lila unquestioned. They knew she would help no matter what. Inside the diner, Lila guided the boy to a quiet corner. She offered him a small plate of food and a cup of warm milk. "You must be hungry," she said softly. "Eat first, then we'll talk." The boy nodded, taking small bites as he glanced around nervously. Meanwhile, the man in the booth continued to observe. He was impressed not only by her kindness but by her ability to handle unexpected situations with calm and grace. He had watched her help children before, but this was different. This was someone who did not just respond to what was convenient. She responded to what was needed. Her compassion was instinctive, powerful, and most importantly, genuine. The boy finished eating and Lila sat beside him. "Can you tell me your name?" she asked. "Leo," he said softly. "Well, Leo, you don't have to be afraid," Lila said gently. "We'll make sure you're safe. You're welcome here anytime." She handed him a small blanket she kept for emergencies, wrapping it around his shoulders. "You're not alone anymore." The children gathered around, offering shy smiles and small words of encouragement. Lila looked at them and said, "See, even new friends can find people who care about them. That's what family is sometimes. People who love and support you even if you haven't known them long." Leo's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of relief. He had been wandering alone, unsure where to go, but now he felt a sense of safety he hadn't felt in a long time. Throughout all this, the man in the booth remained silent, his expression thoughtful. He had seen acts of charity before, of course, but he had never witnessed someone give so freely, so completely without seeking recognition. He felt an unfamiliar tug at his heart, a desire to somehow support her without altering the natural flow of her kindness. He did not want to frighten her with sudden generosity or overwhelm her with attention. He simply wanted to help, to quietly ensure that her work and the lives she touched could continue and flourish. The morning passed quickly, filled with small but meaningful moments. Lila encouraged the children as they drew pictures, helped them with their reading, and offered comforting words when any of them felt anxious or uncertain. She never complained, never hurried, and never showed impatience. Her energy was a steady current of warmth and care that made everyone around her feel valued and safe. At one point, a regular customer arrived. He was an older man who always ordered the same thing: eggs, toast, and a cup of strong coffee. He greeted Lila with a nod, and she returned the gesture warmly. "Good morning," she said softly. "The usual?" "Yes, please," he replied. As Lila prepared his order, she noticed that the man seemed more distracted than usual. He glanced around the diner, watching the children, observing the new boy, and occasionally looking toward her with a quiet smile. She did not think much of it at first, focusing on her work, but she sensed that someone was watching her differently today, not just as a server, but as someone who mattered. When the eggs and toast were ready, she brought them to his table. He looked up, and for a brief moment their eyes met. There was a subtle acknowledgement there, an unspoken recognition of effort, of care, of quiet strength. Lila smiled politely, then returned to the counter, unaware that her simple act had left a profound impression on him. Later in the day, Lila stepped outside for a brief moment, taking a deep breath of the cool air. The children had gone back home for lunch, and the diner was quieter now. She leaned against the doorframe, thinking about Leo, the new boy, and how she could help him find a more stable situation. She had been through many challenges in her own life, and she knew that even small gestures of support could change the course of someone's day, or even their future. The man in the booth, who had been quietly observing, stepped outside as well, pretending to tie his shoes. He watched Lila from a distance, admiring her dedication, her courage, and the way she moved through the world with compassion. He had already decided that he wanted to help, but he did not want to rush. He wanted to understand her fully, to see her intentions, her motivations, and her heart before making any move. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. Lila arrived at the diner early, greeted the children, prepared meals, and handled every situation with the same steady grace. The man quietly and respectfully returned each day. Sometimes he sat in the booth, sometimes he paid for the children's meals anonymously, and sometimes he simply watched, taking mental notes of her actions. Impressed by her unwavering kindness, one afternoon, as the diner filled with the lunchtime crowd, Lila noticed that one of the local children, a girl named Mia, looked troubled. She had been unusually quiet, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt and avoiding eye contact. Lila approached her gently. "Mia, is everything okay?" she asked softly. Mia shook her head. I don't have enough money to buy lunch today," she whispered. Lila's heart sank. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a few coins, placing them in the girl's hand. "Here," she said. "Use this for lunch. You can always come here and we'll make sure you have something to eat." Mia's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of gratitude. She nodded and smiled shyly. "Thank you, Miss Lila," she said. The man in the booth had seen the exchange. He had seen the quiet dignity with which she helped the children, never drawing attention to herself, never asking for thanks or recognition. He felt a growing desire to support her in a more meaningful way. He wanted to ensure that her kindness did not come at the expense of her own well-being. Days turned into weeks, and the connection between Lila and the children deepened. She became a pillar of their lives, a source of stability and hope. She celebrated their small victories, comforted them during setbacks, and inspired them to believe in themselves. Through her actions, she taught them that kindness mattered, that caring for others was a strength, and that even in a world that could be harsh, there were places where love and safety still existed. The man continued to watch, increasingly inspired by her resilience and selflessness. He began to think about ways he could help without undermining her independence or sense of purpose. He did not want to overshadow her efforts, but he knew that with his resources he could make a lasting difference. He imagined quietly providing support for the children, ensuring they had access to education, food, and safety, all without altering the genuine relationships Lila had built. Lila, of course, remained unaware of his intentions. She continued to pour herself into her work, helping the children, serving the customers, and keeping the diner a safe haven for all who came through its doors. She did not notice the quiet support he was offering, nor did she understand the depth of the admiration he felt for her. Her focus remained entirely on the people in front of her, the small acts of care that created ripples of hope in their lives. As the afternoon light softened and the diner began to quiet, Lila paused for a moment, reflecting on the diner was quieter than usual that morning. Sunlight streamed lazily through the windows, casting golden patterns across the worn wooden floor. Lila arrived early as always, carrying her apron and a small notebook she used to track tasks and the children's needs. Today felt heavier somehow, though she couldn't quite explain why. She set her bag down, brushed off her coat, and took a deep breath. It was another day, she told herself. Another day to do what needed to be done. The children arrived in a flurry of energy. Anna and Thomas ran to greet her first, while little Sophie clung to her side, clutching her doll. They were all excited, yet there was a hint of unease in their chatter. Lila noticed immediately. "What's wrong, everyone?" she asked, kneeling to meet their eyes. "It's Leo," Anna said softly. He didn't come this morning. He was crying outside his house and we couldn't help him." Lila's heart tightened. She had grown attached to Leo over the past weeks. The little boy had been through so much already, wandering alone, uncertain where to turn. Lila knew she had to act, but the question of how weighed heavily on her. "We'll figure this out," she said firmly. "Come on inside, let's have some breakfast first. Then we'll see what we can do for Leo." As the children ate, Lila's mind raced. She thought of all the possibilities, how to find him, how to make sure he was safe, how to help him without frightening him further. She had no resources beyond what she had herself, but she had determination, and sometimes determination could go further than money or connections. The man in the booth was there again, quietly observing from his corner. He had been coming more frequently now, watching Lila interact with the children, noting her unwavering kindness, and growing increasingly concerned for her safety and the children's well-being. Today he noticed the worry in her eyes. He understood immediately that something serious was happening, something that might be beyond her ability to handle alone. After breakfast, Lila gathered the children. "I'm going to look for Leo," she told them. "I need you to stay here and keep safe. I promise I'll come back." Anna and Thomas nodded, their faces serious. They had learned from Lila that danger could appear suddenly, but courage and careful action could overcome it. Sophie clung to Lila for a moment, then reluctantly let her go. "Be careful," she whispered. Lila stepped outside, scanning the streets. She walked quickly but quietly, asking neighbors if they had seen Leo, checking alleyways and small parks. The morning passed slowly, each moment filled with tension. She found a few neighbors who had seen the boy wandering, but none knew where he had gone. Her worry grew. The town was small, but that did not mean danger was impossible. She thought of all the children she had helped and realized just how fragile their safety truly was. Meanwhile, the man in the booth stepped outside as well. He had been watching the situation unfold and felt the urge to intervene. But he did not want to startle Lila or take away her independence. Instead, he began quietly assisting, using his network to track down information, calling local contacts discreetly, and keeping an eye on her movements to ensure she was safe. Though Lila remained unaware of his actions, she was being silently supported in ways that she could not yet know. Hours passed, and Lila finally spotted a small figure huddled near an abandoned lot. It was Leo sitting on the curb, his knees drawn to his chest, tears streaming down his face. Relief and fear collided inside her. She ran to him, kneeling beside him and wrapping her arms around him. "It's okay, Leo, you're safe now." "I've got you." The boy trembled in her arms, sobbing quietly. I didn't know where to go," he whispered. "I know," Lila said softly, stroking his hair. "You're not alone anymore. I promise we'll figure everything out together." She looked around, making sure the streets were still empty. There was a tension in the air, a sense that something dangerous had been avoided but not entirely gone. She stood slowly, guiding Leo back toward the diner. The man in the booth had followed discreetly. He watched from a distance as Lila carried the boy safely back. His admiration for her courage deepened. She faced danger without hesitation, placing the well-being of the children above her own fear. He realized he could no longer stay on the sidelines. Her kindness had earned his respect, and now her safety and the children's needed more than quiet observation. Back at the diner, Lila settled Leo at a table with the other children. She offered him warm milk and a plate of food, speaking to him softly and reassuringly. The children gathered around, curious but careful not to overwhelm him. "See, Leo, you're among friends," Lila said gently. "We look out for each other here." Leo nodded. tears still in his eyes but a small sense of relief beginning to take root. He began to eat, slowly at first, then with more confidence as Lila continued to speak in gentle, encouraging tones. The man stepped inside at that moment, pretending to be another customer. He ordered a coffee and quietly watched as Lila interacted with Leo. He noticed the subtle exhaustion in her movements, the strain that came from caring so deeply for others without pause. His admiration now carried a sense of responsibility. She needed help, and he had the means to give it. Lila, still unaware of his presence as more than a diner customer, returned to clearing tables. Her mind was still focused on Leo and the other children. She thought about what the boy might need beyond food and comfort. Clothes, a safe place to stay, perhaps even help with school. The weight of responsibility pressed on her, but she did not complain. She had faced challenges before and had learned that courage often meant continuing, despite fear or fatigue. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside. A man appeared near the street, shouting angrily. He seemed to be looking for something or someone. Lila's heart leapt. She recognized the danger immediately. She ran to the door, shielding Leo with her body. "Stay here," she told the children firmly. "Don't move. Stay safe." The man in the diner's corner moved quickly now, breaking his quiet observation. He stepped toward the doorway, positioning himself so he could intervene if necessary. He had resources, connections, and strength beyond measure, but he had waited for the right moment to act. This was it. He could see that Lila and the children were in danger, and he could no longer remain passive. Lila faced the man outside calmly, though her pulse raced. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice steady despite her fear. The stranger outside did not answer at first, glaring at her and then glancing around at the children. Lila stood her ground, her body tense but her mind clear. She knew she had to protect the children no matter what. The man from the booth stepped forward now, speaking in a firm, commanding voice. "Step back," he said. "These children are under my protection." The stranger faltered, surprised by the authority in his tone. He looked at the man, then at Lila, then at the children. Slowly, he backed away, muttering threats under his breath before turning and disappearing down a side street. Lila's knees weakened slightly, and she sank onto a chair, holding Leo close. She could hardly believe what had just happened. The man from the booth knelt beside her. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. Lila nodded, still catching her breath. "Yes, I think so," she said softly. Her voice trembled slightly from adrenaline and relief. "Thank you, that was terrifying." He smiled gently. "You've been protecting these children for so long. You shouldn't have to do it alone." Lila looked at him, truly seeing him for the first time. There was an air of calm authority, a strength that radiated quietly, but there was also kindness in his eyes. She felt a strange mixture of relief, curiosity, and trust. She did not yet know who he was, only that he had just saved her and the children when danger threatened. The children slowly gathered around, their faces showing a mixture of fear and awe. Anna whispered, "Who is he?" Lila smiled faintly, brushing back Anna's hair. "I don't know," she said softly, "but he's a friend." The man nodded, kneeling to meet the children's eyes. "I'm here to make sure you're safe," he said gently. "No one will hurt you here." Over the next few hours, the tension eased. Lila provided the children with food, comfort, and reassurance. She made sure Leo felt safe and that the other children understood that the danger had passed. The man remained nearby, quietly supporting her in ways she could not yet see. By the evening, as the sun began to set, the diner was calm once more. Lila looked around at the children, the safe space she had created and the man who had intervened so decisively. She realized that her small acts of kindness had created ripples far beyond what she had imagined. She had not been alone, and she now understood that support could come from unexpected places. The man watched her with quiet admiration. He had witnessed courage, selflessness, and love in its purest form, and he had acted, not to take credit, but to ensure that goodness could continue to flourish. He knew this was only the beginning, that together, quietly and carefully, they could do more for the children than either could alone. The sun rose slowly over the small town, casting warm golden light across the streets and the familiar diner. Lila arrived early as always, carrying her apron and a heart full of purpose. The events of the past few days still lingered in her mind. The boy Leo, the danger they had faced, and the quiet, powerful presence of the man who had intervened. She felt a mixture of gratitude, curiosity, and something she could not yet name. But today, she told herself, was a new day and there was work to do. The children arrived first, as they often did. Anna, Thomas, Sophie, and now Leo, who was slowly adjusting to his new routine, ran up to greet her with smiles and laughter. Lila knelt to meet them at eye level. "Good morning, everyone," she said warmly. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes." "We're ready for breakfast," Thomas exclaimed. "Me too," Leo said quietly, his eyes still wide with the caution of a child who had been through too much. Lila smiled and led them inside. She set out plates of scrambled eggs, toast, and small pastries she had prepared, pouring juice for the children and a cup of coffee for herself. The diner smelled of warmth and comfort, a safe haven that had grown even more precious over the past days. As the children ate, the man arrived again, choosing the familiar corner booth. But this time, there was something different in his approach. He did not remain hidden in the background. Instead, he stepped closer, his presence calm but noticeable. Lila glanced up briefly and nodded politely, returning to her work. She still did not know who he was, only that he had appeared at the right moments when help was needed. The morning passed quietly at first. Lila helped the children with small tasks, encouraged them in their drawings and stories, and made sure they were safe and fed. Leo, though still cautious, began to smile more, responding to her kindness with small gestures of trust. Anna and Thomas offered gentle guidance, and Sophie clung close, her doll tucked under her arm. At one point, the man approached the counter. "May I speak with you for a moment?" he asked quietly. Lila paused, unsure but curious. She followed him to a quiet corner, her heart racing slightly. There was something in his tone that commanded attention without demanding it, a quiet authority paired with genuine respect. "I wanted to introduce myself properly," he said. "My name is not important right now, but I have been watching how you care for these children. I have seen your courage, your kindness, and the way you make this diner a safe place for them." Lila's eyes widened slightly. "You've been watching me?" she asked softly, a hint of surprise and unease in her voice. "I have," he said gently, "not in a way to intrude, but because I wanted to understand. I wanted to see the heart behind your work, and now I want to help." Lila blinked, trying to process his words. "Help? I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," he replied. "I just want to support you and the children. You shouldn't have to carry this weight alone." She looked down, her mind racing. Over the years, she had faced countless challenges: financial struggles, societal judgment, and the daily pressures of caring for children who had little else in the world. She had done it alone, believing that she could manage, that her small efforts were enough, and now a stranger was offering something she had never imagined. Assistance not for recognition, but to make her work more effective, safer, and more impactful. "Why?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "Why would you want to help me?" He smiled softly. "Because kindness like yours is rare, because courage like yours is needed, and because I can use my resources to ensure that your work continues, that the children are protected, and that hope is never lost for them." Lila felt a mixture of relief, gratitude, and disbelief. She had spent years giving everything she had, often unsure if it was enough. And here was someone powerful and influential, offering to stand beside her, not to take over, not to claim credit, but to ensure that her efforts could grow and flourish. Over the next few days, the man began to quietly provide support. He helped secure safe housing for the children who needed it, arranged access to education, and provided supplies and resources without disrupting the delicate balance Lila had created. She continued to run the diner, to care for the children, and to build a sense of family and security, unaware of the extent of his behind-the-scenes assistance. One afternoon, as the children played outside, Lila finally spoke to him directly. I don't even know your name," she said softly, smiling. "You can call me whatever you like for now," he replied with a gentle laugh. "What matters is that the children are safe and happy, and that you continue to have the support you need." Lila shook her head, overwhelmed. I don't know how to thank you. You've done so much for us already." "No thanks is necessary," he said. "Seeing these children thrive, seeing you safe and supported is enough for me. That is all the reward I need." The days turned into weeks, and life at the diner began to feel more stable and secure than ever. Leo started school, attending with Anna and Thomas while Sophie continued to grow more confident each day. The children laughed, played, and learned, their lives slowly transforming from fear and uncertainty to hope and possibility. Lila watched them with pride and love, feeling the satisfaction of knowing that her work had lasting impact. The man continued to visit the diner, not as a visitor seeking recognition, but as someone quietly ensuring that everything ran smoothly. Occasionally, he would provide guidance, offer advice, or step in when situations became too dangerous. But he always respected Lila's leadership and vision, understanding that the strength of her work came from her heart and her connection with the children. One evening, as the sun set and the diner grew quiet, Lila paused to reflect on the journey that had brought her here. She thought about the days of struggle, the moments of fear, and the small victories that had built the foundation of her work. She realized that she had not been alone, even when she believed she was. Help had arrived quietly, respectfully, and in a way that allowed her to continue leading with her heart. The man approached her as she cleaned up the last of the tables. "Lila," he said softly, "I want you to know something. You've changed lives here, not just the children's, but mine as well. Watching your courage, your kindness, your unwavering dedication, it has reminded me of what truly matters in life." Lila looked up, her eyes meeting his. I don't know what to say. I've only done what I could." "You've done more than you realize," he replied, "and now we can do even more together." Over the following months, the partnership between Lila and the man grew. Together, they expanded support for the children, creating a safe haven that extended beyond the diner. They secured access to education, healthcare, and opportunities for growth. Lila continued to lead, her vision guiding every decision, while the man provided the resources and protection needed to ensure the work's sustainability. The children flourished under their combined care. Leo thrived in school, gaining confidence and making friends. Anna and Thomas excelled academically and emotionally, while Sophie grew stronger and more independent. The diner became not just a place to eat, but a hub of safety, learning, and community. Finally, the day came when Lila learned the full truth about the man who had watched her, supported her, and intervened when danger struck. He revealed his identity, not to impress or boast, but to provide transparency and trust. Lila was stunned to learn that he was a billionaire, a powerful figure with influence and resources beyond her imagination. Yet what struck her more than his wealth was his humility, his genuine desire to help without overshadowing her. "I wanted to help without changing the heart of what you do," he said quietly. "Your courage, your vision, and your kindness are what made me act. Money alone cannot create the hope and care you bring to these children." Lila felt a mixture of awe, gratitude, and relief. She realized that the world could hold unexpected allies, people willing to support goodness without seeking recognition. She looked at the children playing nearby, their laughter ringing through the diner, and understood that together, they had created something extraordinary, a family, a safe space, and a future filled with hope. From that day forward, Lila continued her work, no longer carrying the burden alone. The man remained a quiet partner, respecting her leadership and vision while providing resources and protection to ensure that every child under their care could grow, learn, and thrive. The diner became a symbol of resilience, kindness, and the power of human connection, and Lila, the humble waitress who had only sought to help, discovered that courage, kindness, and dedication could ripple outward, touching lives in ways she could never have imagined. She had started with small acts of care, and in the process, changed the world, not through wealth or power, but through the simple, profound strength of her heart. The children laughed, played, and learned, surrounded by warmth and safety. Lila smiled, knowing that her journey of compassion had grown into something greater than she had ever dreamed. And in the quiet corner of the diner, the man watched with admiration, knowing that he had found something far more valuable than wealth or influence, the extraordinary power of a kind and courageous heart.